Welcome, and welcome all of you to the latest in the series of State Senator Bill Dodd's virtual town halls. Tonight's event is presented in partnership with KSVY 91.3 FM in Sonoma and Sonoma TV. Tonight, Senator Dodd is joined by four distinguished panelists talking about the rapid emergence of AI, artificial intelligence, its implications for privacy and consumer protection, and what regulatory guardrails might be needed. Once again, I am Rick Wynn, one of the volunteer hosts on KSVY 91.3 FM in Sonoma. This evening's town hall is being presented on multiple video platforms, including Senator Dodd's Facebook page, facebook.com/sendbilldodd. It's also on sdo3.senate.gov.ca. Sonoma Comcast TV channel 27 in the Sonoma Valley, and sonomatv.org, and the Sonoma TV channel on YouTube. For audio only, tune in to KSVY 91.3 FM in Sonoma, or stream on ksvy.org or your favorite smart home device. Again, tonight we're talking about the rapid emergence of AI, its implications for privacy and consumer protection, and what regulatory guardrails might be needed. Senator Dodd and the panelists will take your questions beginning at 6:30. The studio call-in number is 707-933-9133. That's 707-933-9133. We also have questions previously submitted by email, and we will make every attempt to get to those that are not addressed in the panelists' opening remarks and subsequent discussions. Senator Bill Dodd represents all or part of 6 North Bay counties, including Napa, Sonoma, Solano, Contra Costa, Sacramento, and Yolo. And now I turn it over to Senator Dodd, who will make his opening remarks and introduce tonight's panel. Good evening, Senator.
Good evening, and thanks to our panelists and KSVY for convening this latest in a series of town halls. This is actually our 23rd monthly virtual town hall. And Rick, you've been the moderator for almost every single one, and we thank you as well. Tonight, we'll discuss the rapid emergence of artificial intelligence. What are the implications of this potentially transformative technology for privacy and consumer protection, and what guardrails might be needed to ensure it is safe? After, we will open the floor to your general questions, and I'm very glad to be joined by this distinguished group. And thanks to the hundreds of people tuning in tonight. Later in the town hall, we'll be reading your emailed questions. We will start taking your calls at 6:30. The call-in number, once again, is 707-933-9133. When it comes to artificial intelligence, the future is now. We can now direct a computer to do our shopping, drive our cars, and protect our homes. AI could do things like recommend a book we might enjoy based on personal interests. Now, it even can write that book. Or it could write legislation, as it did recently for my office. Perhaps most importantly, now AI can learn from its interactions with us, becoming more human-like and powerful, faster and faster. It's awesome, but it's also scary, because with new innovation comes new challenges. It's clear that AI has many benefits, and I don't want to get lost in this conversation. It can help reduce hunger, fight climate change, manage resources, and increase convenience. But it also has the potential to cause real harm if it's misused or unchecked. Algorithms behind AI are built by humans, so they do contain human biases and can discriminate against people based on race, for example. The vast amount of private data collected on consumers has strong interplay. Also, it's expected to take over certain jobs, putting many people out of work and creating economic hardship. AI could be used to hack into financial accounts or become a weapon for cyber terrorists. More generally, though, the rise of AI could mark a significant shift in human experience as machines take over menial tasks and leave us to channel our energies elsewhere. So the question becomes, what do we do while we watch this new technology unfold? What should we do? Clearly, AI won't regulate itself. It makes me think of the advent of the car. The Model T transformed the world. But we quickly realized it could be dangerous too. So we put up stop signs, set speed limits, and required seatbelts. Fast forward 100 years and we have AI. Does AI need airbags? It's what many of us are thinking. President Joe Biden recently unveiled his blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. And I introduced state legislation that would mirror its central principles, ensuring that Californians are protected. And to demonstrate the power of AI, I used an AI platform, ChatGPT, to write a resolution in support of the president's blueprint. Ironic, isn't it? It's believed to be the first AI drafted resolution in history. So AI is capable of much good, but it also holds great risks. Here tonight are 4 people to talk about the emergence of AI and its impact on Californians. Irina Raicu is an attorney and director for the Internet Ethics Program at Santa Clara University's Markula Center. Her work addresses a wide range of issues, including online privacy, net neutrality, social media's impact on friendship and family, the digital divide, and the ethics of artificial intelligence. We also have Alistair McTaggart, who is the founder of Californians for Consumer Privacy, a nationally recognized consumer privacy advocacy group. Last year, he was appointed by Governor Gavin Newsom to the California Privacy Protection Agency Board. Alistair has been instrumental in creating the 2 strongest consumer privacy laws in the United States. His ballot measure resulted in the passage of the California Consumer Privacy Act of 2018, which I co-authored. And he led the successful campaign for Proposition 24 in 2020, enacting the California Privacy Rights Act. It gave Californians the most comprehensive private privacy rights in the world. Then we have Professor Peter Leahy. He teaches and writes in the field of intellectual property law, particularly focusing on patent law, innovation, and technology transfer right here in my district at the UC Davis School of Law. And Jan Leahy is the alignment team leader at OpenAI, makers of the popular AI platform ChatGPT. Specifically, he is working to design machine learning algorithms that act in accordance with their users' intentions. Now let's hear from Irina Raicu to get us started off. Hello, Irina.
Hi, and thank you so much, Senator Dodd, for organizing this and for inviting me. I look forward to a free-flowing conversation, but I've written down my initial comments to make sure I use my 3 minutes well. So first, please note that the views expressed are my own, not those of the center where I work. I want to start by stressing that the topic of AI is very broad. Different AI models developed based on very different data sets and deployed in very different contexts for different types of decision-making raise a variety of ethical and legal issues and pose very different risks and benefits. Using AI to try to anticipate earthquakes is very different from using it to try to determine whether a particular human being will commit a crime or to create an image of Winnie the Pooh in the style of Dali, the painter, not the AI model. Having said that, I'm very glad that we are focusing today on privacy and consumer protection. So many AI models have been trained on personal data amassed by companies or academic researchers for purposes that the initial data generators never imagined, let alone consented to. Remember when the talk was all about data being the new oil? Back before we had image generative AI, I once asked a friend to make me a drawing of a fluffy sheep in a field with an oil well behind it. Because when it comes to personal data, I think we're more like sheep being shorn over and over again than we are like owners of our own individual oil wells. When we talk about AI and consumer protection, who are the consumers? Is it the companies who purchase AI solutions? Are those of us who are subjected to decisions made by those AI tools less like consumers and more like the consumed? By the way, every time you hear the word data, you need to mentally append the term cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is now one of the conditions required for the common good, and the fact that it's still insufficiently addressed and funded is a grave danger to all of us. When it comes to guardrails to prevent the dangers of AI from happening, I would like to point all of you to the Blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, which Senator Dodd mentioned already, which was issued in October of last year by the White House Office of Science and Technology. There is a lot in it, including suggestions for translating key principles into regulation, as well as into business practices. But I want to just read you the 5 key principles that it lists. You should be protected from unsafe or ineffective AI systems. You should not face discrimination by algorithms, and systems should be used and designed in an equitable way. You should be protected from abusive data practices via built-in protections, and you should have agency over how data about you is used. You should know that an automated system is being used and understand how and why it contributes to outcomes that impact you. And you should be able to opt out where appropriate and have access to a person who can quickly consider and remedy problems you encounter. That sounds extremely aspirational today. Compare that list with the current reality in which consumers lack power and recourse, but in which AI systems already play a role in screening job and loan applications, grading student essays, or suggesting who might get or not get to be released on bail. In California and a few other states, citizens have gained some power, given recent privacy laws that were mentioned already, but the push for a federal privacy law so far has included pressure to preempt those laws. There is a lot of work to be done by legislators, technologists, advocates, academics, and all of us who are impacted by AI tools. In a time when at least one new chatbot seems to be released every day, we need some more innovation and disruption, regulatory innovation, and the disruption by civil society of the current status quo in AI development and deployment. Thank you, and I look forward to my co-panelists' comments.
Thank you, Irina. Now, Alistair, can you kick it off?
Yeah, thank you, Senator, and thank you to everybody today for the invitation. A couple things, Senator. One, it was the Attorney General who appointed me to the Privacy Board. Just want to give a shout out to the AG. And also just to say, like Irina did, these views are my own, not from my work on the Privacy Board. And just acknowledging the 2 laws, California Consumer Privacy Act of 2018 and the California Privacy Rights Act of 2020, I wanted to say that Senator Dodd was an early adopter, so to speak. A lot of people were skeptical in the legislature in 2018 when we first approached them about doing a deal, which at the time was the most far-reaching consumer privacy law ever. And Senator Dodd seized the idea, was a champion of it, and early on understood how important it was to get control of all of our data. So let me give you, when talking about AI, let me give you a couple of thoughts. And we can all think of the great uses of AI, if we can use it on data sets to find new cures for cancer, if we can, as Irina said, predict earthquakes. These are wonderful uses of AI. And so it would be silly just to condemn a technology out of hand. And yet, there are other uses. And again, Senator Dodd's at the forefront because he's concerned about government use of this information. And so think about facial recognition technology and think about a world where the government knows where you are at any time, knows who you've been talking to at any time, knows where you've been. And you think, oh, that's kind of science fiction-y. No, that's happening in China right now because facial recognition is so powerful that it can identify billions of people in real time. And so at that point, your civil liberties as an American, if our government is allowed to employ this technology, are greatly curtailed because guess what? Power tends to corrupt. And if I know everything about everybody all the time, that's real power. And then you can also look at some of these big companies, and they are like nation states. You know, Googles and Facebooks of the world in many cases have revenues that are bigger than small countries. So I think it's the world we're entering into is uncharted territory, but we are, as the senator said, I couldn't agree more. We are in such need of regulation, because you can imagine a world where you walk into a store and someone else walks into the store and suddenly all the clerks are rushing over to the other person. Why? Because they literally on their little glasses can see through the app that they've gotten this all publicly available information. Oh, I know what the person's, where they live. They live in a better section of town than you do. Or I know how much their mortgage is, or I know when they bought their house. And a lot of that information is publicly available. The recent privacy legislation is trying to make as much of that private as possible. But these are worlds where discrimination can be enabled with AI. And so it is sorely needed, this world that Senator Dodd is trying to address with his recent submission. It's really necessary that we put constraints around what we can do with this technology, because again, it's like a lot of medicine. Many of us would say, oh, if you can help a baby in utero who's going to have some awful life-threatening condition, that's probably a pretty good use of technology. But most of us recoil when we say, well, we're going to be able to do something in utero to say the kid's going to be stronger or taller or have blue eyes or blonde hair or whatever. That starts to feel for most people like, well, that's a little weird use of the technology. Maybe we should have some regulation around that. And AI is very much like that. And so I'm pleased to be on this panel. And Senator, I wanted to say again, can't thank you enough for your work over the years, always, in my view, in the right cause here.
Thank you, Alistair. Appreciate it. Now we're going to go to Peter Lee. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Senator Dodd, for convening this town hall and for inviting me. So in my opening remarks, I just want to emphasize three themes. So first, the promise of AI. Secondly, the perils of AI. And finally, the need for responsible governance of emerging technologies more generally. So to kind of pick up on what Senator Dodd already mentioned and some of the other co-panelists, there is enormous potential for AI to benefit society. So we're going to hear a lot today about the perils of AI. I'll be talking about that myself, but we shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are many very beneficial applications of AI, such as AI systems that can detect breast cancers that human doctors miss, or AI systems that accelerate drug discovery and development. I have a friend who has a startup who has an idea for using AI to design more efficient solar panels. So there are enormous beneficial applications of AI. That being the case, as the previous speakers have already indicated, there are many potential perils to AI. And so let me actually try to categorize them into four different kind of buckets, although this is not an exhaustive list. So first, as Alistair was just kind of indicating, are threats to privacy. Machine learning systems require enormous amounts of data. Is going to fuel greater demand to collect personal information and to combine data sets that were previously separate. And AI's ability to analyze and make predictions based on this data really threaten privacy. And we see this in an example that was mentioned earlier, which is facial recognition technology. We have public cameras on our streets. We're relatively comfortable with them. But when you combine them with facial recognition technology, we really seem to see some threats to privacy. So several cities around the Bay Area, including Oakland, Berkeley, and San Francisco, have actually banned facial recognition technology. Another concern or peril of AI is the relationship between automation and unemployment. AI promises great efficiencies, but automation can translate to replacing human workers. This is likely to hit blue-collar workers the hardest. The Council of Economic Advisors once predicted that self-driving cars threaten 2 to 3 million driving jobs in the United States. This phenomenon can also affect white-collar jobs. I teach at a law school, and lawyers are concerned that certain aspects of practicing law could actually be performed by AI. So a third kind of bucket of concerns has to do with deception, fraud, and misinformation. Deep fakes on YouTube are surprisingly convincing. Search engines that use AI sometimes produce incorrect results. We've seen the spread of misinformation on social media networks like Facebook and Twitter, and generative AI like ChatGPT, and it's wonderful to have somebody from ChatGPT here raise some concerns. So as I mentioned, I teach at a law school. There are concerns that students could write papers that are actually authored by AI. So a final set of concerns has to do with discrimination in automated decision-making. Machine learning algorithms and the data that train them can reflect systemic bias. There are lots of examples of this. For instance, Amazon's AI system for screening CVs discriminated against women. Basically, it was trained on the data having to do with its existing workforce, which is overwhelmingly male. And AI was used to predict future medical needs by looking at the past medical expenditures for various patients. This discriminates against African-American patients who have less access to healthcare. So more generally, I think that we need to be very careful and proactive in governing emerging technologies. New technologies can obviously benefit society enormously, but they also create unexpected harms. Facebook's mantra of moving fast and breaking things can be actually quite dangerous. So consider the role of social media in spreading misinformation. So I think we need carefully considered guardrails that can ensure that AI develops robustly while still aligning with the interests of society. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. We're going to move to our final panelist, Leahy. Jan, welcome.
Thank you very much. And thanks a lot for having me on this panel. I'm really looking forward to conversation. Yeah, like the other panelists, I want to disclaim that these are my own views and not necessarily the views of my employer. I work for OpenAI, which is a tech company based in San Francisco. It has kind of a unique structure that it is a capped profit corporation. And so that allows us to, put the mission first and not just maximize for profits. Our mission is to develop and deploy artificial general intelligence for the benefit of all of humanity. And we work very closely with Microsoft on various AI deployments. And the thing we are observing right now is that generative AI is improving rapidly and kind of being incorporated across many industries and applications. And one example is ChatGPT that was already mentioned, which is a virtual AI assistant that you can talk to. I lead the alignment team at OpenAI. And so my team's job is to train AI systems to act in accordance with what humans actually want them to do. And that encompasses both today's systems like ChatGPT and future systems that are a lot smarter than humans. And so I and my team worked on ChatGPT and GPT-4, and we were working on getting it to, not say racist things, not write misinformation, and generally be helpful and honest, and, not do unsafe things. And that is kind of, the things you would want out of a chatbot today. But the other kind of problems we were trying to prepare for is, what happens when AI actually does get smarter than humans and is capable of doing a lot more things than it is today? How can we get those AI systems to still work with us and act in accordance with our intentions and not try to harm humans out of their own accord or, take over the world in some way? And in practice, a lot of the work that we do is we work with human feedback. We train our systems with the help of humans who are labeling or rating various responses and kind of try to, in a way, teach AI in the way you would teach, a child or a human what the behavior is that we desire out of these systems. And I think in particular, we really need to start, as these systems get more capable, I think, there's a lot of open questions of how can we prepare society to be ready for AI that is smarter than us, that can, potentially take over a lot of jobs. In particular, knowledge worker and white collar jobs, I think, are, more and more at risk. And how can we regulate AI companies to ensure that AI development is actually safe and beneficial and, in accordance with what humans want?
Thank you, Jan. Rick, you're on.
Thank you. I just have to say that was the four panelists gave me so much information. I'm grateful for it. I'm sure our listeners are as well. Our first question What can anybody can chime in on these? What can be done to ensure that AI safety research and the development of robust safety measures keep pace with the rapid advancements in AI capabilities so that we don't inadvertently create autonomous AI systems with potentially harmful consequences?
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent question. And I think in a way, this has two parts, right? And this first part is how can we accelerate safety research and safety progress? And the second part is how can we ensure that progress in AI capabilities doesn't run away and progress faster than safety can keep pace. There's a whole bunch of things we're trying to do at OpenAI, right? We're expanding the team that is doing these research and collaborating with externals. But also I think in general, society, as a society, I think this is a problem that deserves a lot more attention than it currently gets.
Anybody else?
Yes,
Alistair?
Sure, Rick. I say this as a dyed-in-the-wool capitalist. I'm a business guy. And I feel like there are times in lots of areas in our business world where we need regulation. We need sensible regulation. We need regulation that allows for innovation. But look, we just saw in the banking crisis where the smaller banks had less regulation than the bigger banks, and look what happened. They and they've been lobbying for that less regulation. They got it, and then didn't end up so well. What we saw in privacy was that 30 years of the big tech companies saying, "Hey, look, self-regulation is the best regulation. Don't dare regulate us. You're going to kill the golden goose here." Never got anywhere. And so it wasn't until government stepped in, and which we were able to do with the initiative process here in California. It wasn't until the citizens of California said, "Hey, look, that's enough," that we had the first substantial privacy law in the country. Now a bunch of other states are following us, which is gratifying. So I think we need sensible regulation. And Jan, it's super exciting that this is in San Francisco in the Bay Area, this company which is going to change the world. But I think all of us on the panel want it to change the world in good ways, not in bad ways. And so I think there should be things you just can't do, especially the government can't do with this new technology.
I want to add to that we are already far behind, that many examples that I mentioned of AI being deployed in a variety of areas are already shaping our lives, and the regulations are maybe coming, and they're probably coming first in the EU long before we're going to have them here, but they will impact Californian companies as well. We need to incentivize that safety research. And unfortunately, the example of cybersecurity that I gave earlier is not a cheerful one, because we are completely dependent on the internet for a lot of what we do, and we haven't secured it. And I'm afraid that we're kind of following the same path with AI.
Do you have a quick comment on this?
Sure. So, I think that we have a great enthusiasm for technology in this society. And obviously technology does wonderful things, but it might be useful to learn from other jurisdictions. So for instance, in Europe, there's something called the precautionary principle, which takes kind of a different approach to emerging technologies, where we don't kind of rush headlong and move forward as quickly as possible. We really try to assess the potential risks of a technology. And I think, as some of my co-panelists indicated, market forces will actually compel market actors to move very quickly. So I understand that, Google in some sense rushed the introduction of Bard to compete with Microsoft and ChatGPT. And so given that these are these forces that will tend to accelerate technological progress, some sort of precautionary principle might be useful as a countervailing force.
Okay, our phone lines are open, 707-933-9133, and we already have 3 callers waiting. We'll start with Larry from Yolo County, wants to make a brief comment on how to address AI. Larry, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I want to start by thanking Senator Dodd for sponsoring this discussion, because it's been my observation that we typically allow technology to get very far ahead of legislation and regulation before we react to it. So I very much appreciate that you're working to focus the conversation now. My comment is, I think we need to find a reasonable balance between innovation and safety, between individual and corporate desires and community health. And as such, one first step we could take would be to create a publicly shared list online of each AI risk we identify, sort of a community brainstorming effort, and then we could describe use cases. We can also create a parallel list for all the benefits we think are possible, and after some period of time, perhaps 3 months of public brainstorming, we can start to talk about how to support the expected benefits while limiting the possible dangers, and that way we could get ahead of the usual technology curve while not overly limiting innovative progress. Thank you.
Any comments from the panel?
Appreciate the caller coming in with such a succinct idea. Go ahead, Irina.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that there's an organization called the Partnership on AI that does have, among other things, a database of AI risks of the things that have gone wrong. So that's one place. Sorry, I'll try to find the link and maybe drop it in the chat. But that's one place where you can look for that part of the equation.
Okay, we have Joy from Sonoma who would like to talk about AI and Parkinson's. Joy? Hello, Joy? Joy, are you there? Okay, we'll go to line 2 with Mark from Davis, a question about the right to an explanation. Mark?
Yeah, hi, thanks so much for taking my question. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, my question was whether what was happening in California government with regards to the right to explanation. For example, it was mentioned earlier, the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights includes the right to notice and explanation. And in that text, I saw explanation is defined among other ways as a system providing information that reflects the factors and influences that led to a particular decision. I guess my comment is just that it seems like the right to explanation could be beneficial to individuals. It provides transparency into when decisions are being made and how they were made about you as a person. And then the companies also don't have to share their data or their models. They would provide the answer and then provide this other information. And then for the government, this would allow, explanations would allow, would force, companies, there would be guardrails for companies to have to explain their outcomes, and it would also help address issues of bias. I was just wondering if anybody on the panel has any thoughts on this. Thank you so much.
Alistair?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer. So one of the things that's exciting about the law that passed in 2020 at the ballot box, the California Privacy Rights Act, is it anticipates this area only with respect to businesses, so not with governments. Again, that's why it's important that Senator Dodd's doing what he's doing. But it mandates that the agency on whose board I sit issue regulations. I'm just going to read this: governing access and opt-out rights with respect to businesses' use of automated decision-making technology, including profiling, and it requires businesses to include meaningful information about the logic involved, as well as a description of the likely outcome of the process with respect to the consumer. So while those regulations have not yet been developed, and they will be continuously developed as technology improves, if you think that there's an analog over in Europe where they have this notion of meaningful information. And so what we're trying to do on the business side is to say, hey, businesses, when you're taking these decisions, when the algorithm is making these decisions about, the jobs I see or the insurance offers I get to see or all these things, you're now going to eventually have to show me why. Why did I see this? Why did I not? What's your algorithm? Is it biased? How's it working? I don't want to be part of it. I actually don't want my data automatically processed. And it's just a couple of lines in a very long bill, but this notion is going to be incredibly powerful. And I'm so pleased that California has this in statute now. And this will happen because now it's just a matter of getting the right regulations to address that.
So if I could just jump in real quick. So, I think that the right to explanation is very important, and I think is important on a number of different levels. So first, it's important on a very technical level. So in many ways, AI systems operate as black boxes. Sometimes the developers themselves don't actually know exactly how the AI system reached a particular conclusion. So this would actually be quite useful in kind of opening up that black box from a technical standpoint. And the second point has to do with really kind of a dignitary interest. So, it is kind of it implicates a dignitary harm in a sense to have important aspects of one's life controlled by processes that you don't even understand. So they're kind of, there's kind of a relation between this notion of a right to explanation and the notion of due process. These are just fundamental interests we want to respect, and we can do so through this right to explanation.
Okay, pardon me. I think Joy is back with us on line one. Joy, you have a question? We're having trouble with Joy.
Can you hear me?
There you are. Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay,
Yes.
First, thank you so much for doing this. And secondly, my husband has Parkinson's. So I wondered what role AI might play in helping a Parkinson's patient with their handwriting, with connecting their thoughts, and sometimes just struggling in general.
Would anybody like to tackle that?
I'm happy if no one else wants to. I just think, Joy, that the possibilities, this is where the positive side of things, right? The possibilities of AI are extraordinary when you unleash it on these vast data sets. And as Peter was saying, it's I think it's going to be very dependent on what access it gets to which data sets. The important thing with this, in my perspective, is making sure that, let's say your husband, that the information that the AI learns about him is willingly given, is voluntarily given. But in terms of developing drugs, I think that the amount of the potential is limitless. And there are, countries around the world, like Sweden has a great de-identified data set, a health set. So I think we're going to enter a golden age here of drug development, as long as it's done ethically. So.
But I think Joy was asking about different issues, not about drugs. And here I think we have to be very careful in terms of potentially overhyping medical AI, which I think has definitely happened. I have seen even bioethicists, assert that various diagnostics will do better than human doctors. And then I've seen AI technologists push back against that and say that these models are often brittle. Their effectiveness is less when you move from one data set to another. And we have to be very, very cautious about raising false hopes, at least in the short, immediate time frame. There's a lot of potential, but there are also absolute limits to these tools. They are not this just all-powerful force that's going to help us find all solutions. And here I'm hoping that Jan will say more, and we'll talk maybe a little bit more about how he thinks in terms of aligning. Like how do you guys figure out what human beings want that the AI should be aligning to?
Yeah, I think this is a really excellent and incredibly important question that we haven't done nearly as much on as we need to. And in general, kind of the way I'm thinking about it is like there's generally two aspects to this question, right? Like you want AI systems that are aligned with you and that are personalized with you, right? You want a variant of ChatGPT, for example, that really understands you and can help you in your specific case. And then there's the other aspect of like, we need to align AI as a whole with society and like with that, because in a way, the effects of AI affect everyone. And so right now there's these questions of like, what kind of tasks should ChatGPT refuse to help with? But as AI gets more capable, right, these will be like much more widely ranging questions of like, what are people allowed to do with AI? Like what kind of research, for example, can you do? And yeah, I think in general, like we need some kind of democratic process to figure out how to do this. And I don't think these are decisions that should be made unilaterally by a tech company.
Okay, we have our lines are backing up here. We've got Karahan of Davis, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, wants to know how the military might use AI. Karahan? Hello.
Yeah. Hey, I would
Yeah.
like to know how this U.S. military and another military will be using AI. And then there's the other aspect of like we need to
turn off your radio, please.
I did.
So the question is with regard to AI and the military. Does anybody want to tackle that one?
Jan, do you have any experience with that at all?
So we actually have a use case policy that disallows a use for like military purposes.
I will say that I think none of the four of us are experts in that particular, kind of deployment of AI. And this goes back to what I was saying initially, that it's very hard. We can talk about AI in medicine, and then the risks and benefits are very different than the ones being used by the military. I definitely know that the military is developing and using AI, and that they've come up with their own set of ethical principles for developing and deploying AI. But I'm afraid I don't have a lot of information about that, except that there's a lot of debate about potentially autonomous or semi-autonomous weapon deployment, as well as things like facial recognition, but on the battlefield as opposed to in our cities.
I'll say that I just dropped in the chat a YouTube link, which anybody watches. If anybody's listening, you go to Boston Dynamics is the corporation. It's the Atlas is the name of the platform, and there are these two robots that do things you had no idea that they can jump up, they can flip over, and then you just it's a slight distance from that to them carrying a gun with facial recognition. So I do think it's a great question, and this is again why we need to get some our hands around what is permissible with this technology.
So just to kind of piggyback on what some of the other panels have mentioned, the military is already using AI. So unmanned drones are an example of, autonomous vehicle that's kind of based on AI. And I have heard, I don't know how advanced the technology is, of the potential use of facial recognition technology to differentiate military targets or military personnel from civilians to try to reduce collateral casualties. But I don't know how sophisticated that technology is.
I will say those Boston Dynamics videos are unbelievable. Well, at line 2, we have Christy of Rio Vista, who would like to talk about legislation.
They're using unmanned drone, for example, of autonomous vehicles.
Christy, turn off your radio.
Technology is the potential use of facial recognition technology to differentiate military.
Please cut that.
Military personnel from civilians, trying to reduce.
Christy, are you there? Okay, we're going to go to Sean from UC Davis about some changes needed with AI. Sean, are you available? Sean? Well, it seems that we need some AI to help us get through the show. We do have David Wagner send in an email. AI is coming and will show up fast because it's financially advantageous for companies to deploy it, reduce labor costs and better customer service. Computers and robots don't get stuck and don't ask for salary increases. With this, there will be lots of unskilled and undereducated people with no jobs available to them. Is California planning on taking care of the displaced workers? Will California create civil service jobs or raise taxes? In other words, basically, what can California do to help mitigate the unemployment issue that will come with AI?
Well, I can tell you, if it's like anything else in the state of California, we will be monitoring that all the time. Obviously, our workforce is very important to us, and making sure, obviously, having people be able to earn enough money to have a quality of life in the high cost areas here in the state of California is absolutely critical. But I don't think we are seeing that happen rapidly now, but that's something that's going to have to be on our radar.
And I'll just add to that, it's unclear exactly what the impact on labor will be of AI. So, certainly some jobs will be eliminated. And, as the senator mentioned, we'll have to have some sort of policy interventions to address that negative impact. But it is possible that AI will actually create other jobs. It's also possible that AI will really just kind of augment certain jobs so that, going back to the earlier example of kind of medical applications of AI, instead of an AI system being used to, let's say, detect cancer as opposed to an oncologist, perhaps the oncologist will use AI or lawyers will use AI. And so in many ways, we'll kind of incorporate this technology into existing jobs.
Yeah, a good example of that is, I don't know how many of you have gotten on the line with the airlines, for example. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want you to talk to a human being. So you're getting that interaction with chatbot to get more information. They can handle more customers than they ever had. So it would be, in many cases, supplementing. My bill this year on AI, I just want to make sure, as California, we could have probably used that at the DMV. We probably could have used that at, the EDD during COVID to answer more questions and we were just unable to get enough human beings in a room that could have possibly done the job that it needed to be done at a data center. I think this is going to be something in those areas of the state that will be coming in. I just want to make sure that whenever one of our constituents is interfacing with AI, that it's disclosed to them so they know they're not talking to a human, that they're talking to chatbot or AI, whatever you want to call it.
Want to add also, as long as we're talking about the labor and about protecting people, that there's also a group of, I don't know whether they're skilled or unskilled laborers who are at work and building AI right now. And those are people like data laborers who are hired and used by all of the big tech companies who get paid very little, often work in terrible conditions. So we can talk about the coming implications, but we can also concentrate on working on the current harms that are happening even in the labor market right now.
Okay, we have Reed on line one from Sonoma County.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what.
Good, Reed, go ahead.
I'll just go ahead and continue watching the rest.
Reed, go ahead. Well, okay. I have a question. Last month, OpenAI released Planning for AGI and Beyond, which states that the mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence, AI systems that are generally smarter than humans, benefits all of humanity. What role is there for government here? And how do we reassure people that the guardrails are up?
Well, I'll start on that. I'm interested in what everybody's saying. I just kind of gave an outline. What we would want to do, make sure here in the state of California that people are aware of who they're dealing with and why they're dealing with it. And, we'll have those guardrails and they'll be accessible by the public. I don't know, Jan, have you entertained any of this in any of your ventures with chatbots?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we need these guardrails and we need everyone to hold OpenAI accountable for actually delivering on this mission. And I think, regulation is one of the points where, we really have to, write in the rules of that the way AI is developed is safe and is responsible and is actually to the benefit of humanity.
I would add that there's a lot of debate around AI technologists on whether AGI will ever happen. So it's not just a given, and it's worth considering again what AGI would look like, what we mean when we say that, and what guardrails might be needed to prevent it from coming if we're worried about it.
So I think the government can play at least two different roles with respect to AGI and AI more generally. So one, obviously there's the traditional power to make laws, and a lot of laws would actually work to circumscribe some of the effects of AI. So, we've got the Civil Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, all of which prevent discrimination. This could be applied to AI and AGI as well. The Federal Trade Commission has been actually quite aggressive in actually compelling the destruction of algorithms that were trained by unlawfully obtained data. And so that's kind of the traditional regulatory function of government. But in addition, I think the government plays a very important role in kind of providing guidance, providing frameworks, facilitating public conversation. So, we've talked at various points tonight about the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. That in and of itself is not actually a law. It does reference certain laws, but it's not actually enforceable in and of itself. But this notion of, of creating a Bill of Rights to deal with AI, I think it actually captures the public imagination, and it provides a lot of impetus for companies to think, we should really take this seriously, and this would encourage a fair degree of self-regulation.
Okay, we're going to try Sean on line 3 one more time. Sean, are you there?
Hi there. Yeah, thank you for having me. The question I have is, if many of the issues we see confronting AI are general systemic issues that have persisted throughout the years in the U.S., is it possible to fix those that are congruent with AI without a restructuring of all of our institutions, or will it require an almost revolutionary change within the U.S. political system? And additionally, I'm also very interested in how prevalent the discussion of AI has been within the political realm for Senator Dodd.
Great question. Senator, do you want to kick that off?
Yeah, could you reframe that question, Rick, for me? I didn't catch that.
No, I'm happy to take a stab.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
sir. Thank you.
I think that technology, there's this desire that some people have when and I'm not saying the caller did, but some people sort of say, oh, well, this technology changes everything, and therefore we need to change the system. We need to change the governance because this technology is so powerful. And I think one of the things that's just enduring about our country is the principles of, democracy and how we have shared power, and the checks and balances are sometimes they appear to be slow, but that's kind of by design, right? You don't want to stifle new technology. You want to let it get going. We're not a sort of authoritarian society where at the pointy end is the leader saying this is okay and this isn't. We're kind of sclerotic and slow, and sometimes years go by where we haven't regulated. But in general, I feel like if you look at the history, and I love the car analogy, because remember, cars used to be super dangerous, and then we got airbags, and we got anti-lock brakes, and we got GPS, and we got crumple zones. Took a long time. Took a lot of fighting. Ralph Nader had to do his thing, and the car companies resisted. So I think our existing governmental framework will solve this problem long term, but we need committed people. Bill Dodd's one of them, to sort of say, hey, look, and actually the president too, this blueprint is a good idea to start getting a public debate going about what's the right role. We need people like Jan developing and pushing, and he obviously has a noble attitude where he's not just saying, I want to just make the max amount of money and use this for whatever I can do. But even if you were that person, we'd want to still, have the right regulations to deal with it. So we need the balance. And I think we have that in our society right now.
Yeah, I think, Rick, I think that so often too, the government doesn't, we have these laws, we ask business to do their part, and we regulate, but oftentimes we don't regulate even ourselves. I think my bill is starting off with that framework. This is so important that we ought to show the leadership at the state of California and make sure that we're doing the things necessary that should be done for safe, operational, effective AI use in our state departments.
Senator, you have summed up your job, and you've given the last word. So if you'd like to close us out, time is up.
All right, Rick, I want to thank you and KSVY again for doing this for us so often. Irina, thank you for your participation here tonight. It's been very valuable to get that counterbalance in there, and really do appreciate that. Peter, thank you for your just promptly answering these questions so adeptly. Alistair, you're a good friend, and we've worked together on so many issues. I trust you with the work that we've been doing, and I appreciate you being on. And Jan, thank you. This is sometimes very hard to come in when you've got people that are talking about guardrails and everything. I see you as someone that embraces that and wants to work with society to make this thing better for everybody. I do have a friend that I trust that texted me during this thing and said, I've never read this, but people ought to read the book Frankenstein. For whatever that means. If you've read it, great. If you haven't, I guess get a copy of that. Books on tape. But thank you all very much. And to all the people that are listening and watching tonight, thank you very much for your time. It really makes this thing work. Appreciate it.
I'd like to thank everybody for participating as well. I found it one of the more interesting hours that I have spent in a while. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Senator, for putting this together. And good night from KSVY 91.3 FM.